One is reducing poverty, empowering women, unlocking productivity, and also developing institutions that can hopefully work more efficiently. My colleagues and I at IBM Research have been trying to develop intelligent systems that can financially profile people, individuals who typically don't have any access to financial services. The key observation that we made was that you really can't superimpose the risk assessment and credit scoring systems that you find in the developed world and other markets onto the continent, because the types of data sets that we see are fundamentally different. You're not going to find credit card reports or bank statements. You're more likely to find innovations such as mobile money and cell phone behavior that you can hopefully use to profile and credit score people. For the last few years, we've been leveraging this type of data source to build an intelligent system that's able to leverage the airtime usage and mobile money transactions that people naturally generate to be able to develop a credit score and credit limit. This solution has been deployed with a bank here in East Africa, and it scored close to 2 million people. These are people who typically didn't have any access to financial services. We apply machine learning algorithms, and we've developed statistical models that's able to differentiate good and bad customers based on features such as airtime usage, mobile money, location, and so on. And during this exploration, we came across what I think is really the crux of the problem, which really revolves around data and identity. When we think about how can we enable people to access services, whether it's financial, education, healthcare, it really comes down to data and identity. Recently, in the last few weeks, in fact, there's been much publicity around some of the incidents and cases around how our data is being misused and shared without a lot of people's knowledge. When you couple this with some new progressive regulation that's coming in, examples are the General Data Protective Regulation Act that's being enforced in other parts of the world. There is an opportunity here for us to reinvent, reimagine, and think about how we can potentially create a digital identity for tomorrow and enable people to control their own data so they're able to access services. This is incredibly important for the continent, simply because hundreds of millions of people don't have any formal identity. Right? Globally, 1.5 billion people are without identity, and it's been shown to have significant impact on the GDP. As I mentioned, during our explorations, we've also thought about how can we address this problem? And we've come across technologies like blockchain. And blockchain has some very interesting properties. It's a new way, as you've heard in the last few days, it's a new way to decentralize and digitize data and securely share it. So you can see this having a fundamental role when we think about how to decentralize data and enable people to control it. Since 2017, we've taken what I believe are our first steps in developing a digital identity that can be used here on the continent. Our solution is able to leverage some of these microdata that I've been talking about, transaction information, mobile money, to create a profile for individuals and businesses. Since November 2017, we've deployed this solution, and we've extended it to a couple of hundred SMEs. And this is an important segment because they're the economic engine of the continent. Moving forward, while this is a first step in what I think is a very long road, it can provide the blueprint to enable access to other financial services, ranging from healthcare to financial services. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Diriye. Next up is Professor Jonathan Esole. You're welcome, Professor.
Good morning, everyone. So it's a pleasure to be here, especially because I'm just from the other side of the border in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. So I am a mathematician and a physicist, and my area of research is called string theory. So what is string theory? Most of the time when I mention to the person sitting next to me in the airplane that I am a string theorist, they assume I'm a musician. And I really take a lot of joy in that because mathematics is just art, and to be a musician, for someone like me who is very bad with his hands, is the ultimate compliment. And then I have to explain to them that art takes many forms, and there is a way you do art with math that is extremely natural, beautiful, and elegant. And we string theory are really full of ourselves, and we like to think that our art is one of the beautiful art across science. As a geometer, my advantage is that I do not depend on the fact that string theory is actually a theory of physics. I think of it more as some kind of a muse that gave me an inspiration to study geometries. So I basically think of a property of space-time that I will transform into conjecture about certain geometries that naturally appear in string theory. So this is one of my favorite pictures, so I have to tell you a lot of my slides are straight from my Facebook, okay? And so in this picture, it's me and my student for my class of algebraic geometry. So I'd like to ask the audience a question: which one is my hand? So, okay, so this type of hands, you don't see them a lot among teachers who teach algebraic geometry. You don't see them a lot among people who do string theory. This type of hands are usually used to dig diamonds in mines or to do all kinds of works. And one thing that we want to do as a next Einstein Fellow is to show that this type of hands can also do art using mathematics and contribute to our knowledge as a humankind. And how do we do this? One way we do this is by basically copying Hollywood, and we build in Wakanda. So what does it mean? So when I got announced as the next Einstein Fellow, I first assumed that I'm going to spend all my time teaching string theory in every corner of Africa because it's so important. And I ended up meeting a lot of people from all walks of life who had ideas. I met, for example, my sister, Raissa Malou, who is the ambassador from Congo, who got me into the Week of Science. And actually, I'd like to make a shout out to all the ambassadors, and the fellow should take example on them. They're already doing great things. She invited several ambassadors to Kinshasa. They will come during the Week of Science and represent our community of scientists. I'd like some clap, please. So going back to building Wakanda, I also got involved with an organization called Malaika, which is a Congolese organization that supports the education of young girls across the continent. And this is something that is very dear to my heart. First of all, I am the proud daughter of a 6-month daughter, the proud dad of a 6-month daughter. And I had the opportunity to teach in a class of girls that are about 13 years old, and they live in the middle of nowhere, somewhere in the Katanga province, in a very small city where there were no water before, no electricity, and a group of really good people, including the founder and president of Malaika, ended up building this institution, a school, that focused on education of women. And so, coming from the Congo, we went through all these wars and so on, where many times the body of our women were actually the field of battle. And as we think about the future of Africa, we should never forget the best part of Africa. The best part of Africa is not our mine, it's not our diamonds, it's our people. And among our people, our women are the very best of Africa. So when you manage to bring science to little girls in the middle of Africa as an NEF fellow, what you send in a message is not only that obviously, some of these girls are going to end up at Harvard and MIT. They're really good. But you also send in a message to the rest of the country that science does not only happen in the big city. Science is not only for people who are already in college. We need to grow the number of people who go to college. And to do that, we need to go to the smallest village of Africa. So we're going to do this one equation at a time. We have so much resources. And you see here, you have a picture of me with my son, Imran. And these are my students at Malaika. And the sir that you see, this is my assistant teacher, Sylvain. So every Saturday, I spend time sitting on my computer through Skype to teach the class. And my son told me, Dad, it used to be Saturday, you and I. What is going on with this daughter? So I took him to watch the movie Black Panther. And at the end, I told him, hey, Imran, what we're doing is we are building Wakanda. I'm going to stop with this. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor. Up next is Dr. Reem Kefi. Dr. Kefi, you're welcome.
We are all similar, all different. This picture reflects our genetic diversity, our strength and wealth. Today, I share with you my story, the story of a young Tunisian woman geneticist passionate about genetic diversity. I started as a molecular anthropologist studying ancient DNA in France to try to draw migration flow. Every time a population colonizes a new land, there are genetic adaptations. And so, North Africa have a high level of genetic diversity compared to Europeans, for example. We have shown that North African populations, the genetic background of these North African populations is made up of genetic contribution of various origins, North African, Eurasians, and Sub-Saharan. This great genetic variability highlights the passage of many civilizations since prehistoric time. So, North Africa's population, like a mosaic, represents a powerful model to decipher complex mechanisms in biology, like those related to disorders. In fact, North African countries are facing an epidemiological transition characterized by a decrease of infectious diseases, but also an increase of genetic and multifactorial disorders. These diseases are serious, chronic, disabling, and require a long-term specialist care, which represents a burden, a heavy burden for a socio-economic burden for North African populations and countries. In Tunisia, for example, there are more than 400 genetic disorders, and for 45% of them, the molecular etiology is still unknown. Regarding multifactorial disorders, the prevalence of type 2 diabetes is 13%, and the prevalence of metabolic syndrome is 30%. Being sensitive to these epidemiological situations, I declined the offers of a job in France after graduating. My competence, my background with ancient DNA is unique competence in the region. I felt I had a responsibility to come back to Tunisia to help and to adapt my knowledge to the Tunisian context. So, we perform DNA typing for a large spectrum of genetic disorders in order to understand their molecular etiology. Regarding monogenic disorders, our studies allowed the molecular characterization of these diseases, permitting early, even pre-symptomatic diagnosis and preventive interventions. In addition, We perform multidisciplinary investigations of type 2 diabetes and metabolic syndrome based on the integration of various data, including clinical, genetic, nutritional, and microbiotic characteristics. In the frame of international collaborative projects, we are working on the identification of new biomarkers to better understand the etiology of type 2 diabetes, to improve the healthcare of patients, and to prevent complications. Otherwise, I have used my skills on ancient DNA to assist with the creating of new protocols for human body identification in forensics. So we have developed for the first time in Tunisia a rapid and effective molecular protocol to identify human body in forensics using DNA extracted from teeth. All this work is a huge challenge because, in spite of such genetic variability, we must adapt our technology to deal with the limited funding and infrastructure. But we are hard workers, and with our scientific excellence, we can have achievements and innovations. We can do this, and to be proud of. So, North African genetic diversity, it's a powerful tool to decipher complex mechanisms in biology. It's our strength and our wealth. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kefi. Up next is Dr. Justus Masa. You're welcome, Dr. Masa.
I am an electrochemist. In electrochemistry, we use electricity to run chemical reactions, or we manipulate chemical reactions to generate electricity. I have two questions and one simple experiment for all of you. Let me begin with the experiment. Does anybody feel his or her breath? Let us do it together. Shall we all breathe in and out? Until I asked you this question, of course you were breathing, but you didn't have to pay attention to your breath. And when I asked you to breathe, you didn't have to worry about your oxygen supply. So my question is, can we emulate breathing to create a robust energy infrastructure for everybody, everywhere, where we never have to worry about the fuel supply? Yes, we can do, and this is the goal of my research. The second question is, what do you imagine will be the fuel that will power our technological advancements in 200 years and beyond and beyond? We have limitless capacity to generate renewable energy, but our capacity to store it is limited by two big factors. First, batteries require special materials to convert fuel into power, and very few elements are light enough to make effective batteries. Second is about sustainability. Lithium-ion batteries, for example, are great batteries, but if you care about sustainability, then by replacing one finite resource with another, we may win against climate change, but we certainly lose out on sustainability. For example, studies indicate that by the year 2200, we shall have severely depleted, if not completely exhausted, the available lithium reserves in the world. In response, many electrochemists, including myself, are working on hydrogen fuel cells. Hydrogen is the lightest element that we have and can therefore make batteries with the highest energy density. Here you are seeing a Toyota Mirai, which is powered by hydrogen fuel cells. It is silent and water is its exhaust. Now, the fuel cells in this car use platinum as the catalyst. And when you want to split water to produce hydrogen, you also have to use platinum group elements as the catalysts. When we take a look at the relative abundance of elements in the Earth's crust, we see that the platinum group elements are here in yellow. They are more than 1 billion times more scarce than the elements here in green. I call this God's punishment for electrochemists. But nature has solved this problem. Nature uses enzymes as its catalysts. Right now, every cell in your body is converting the oxygen that you inhale into water and energy. And the trees out there are busy producing oxygen. We inhale what the trees exhale, and we exhale what the breeze inhale. The supply never runs out. When you breathe in oxygen, the cells in your body use the oxygen to pick up hydrogen atoms from the sugar in your body, generating a flow of electricity. When electrons are flowing, then that's electricity flowing. My approach is to emulate breathing to create hydrogen fuel cells. We have successfully emulated the active center of photosystem 2, nature's enzyme for producing oxygen, to create cheap catalysts for oxygen for water splitting. In the same way, we have emulated oxygen transport and reduction during respiration at the cell level to create cheap catalysts for hydrogen fuel cells. Combining these two, we have built an integrated system which combines 2 units. In one part, water is fed into an electrolyzer where it is split to produce hydrogen, exhaling oxygen, just like the trees do. In the other part, we feed hydrogen into a hydrogen fuel cell. The cell inhales oxygen from the atmosphere the way we do, generating electricity and exhaling water. Our fuel cell is regenerative. That means it can constantly generate electricity and does not run out of fuel. Now, increased capacity for energy will increase the opportunity to convert Africa's excess capacity in its rapidly growing population into productive labor. When we provide energy to communities without sufficient energy, we drive up economic growth and unemployment goes down. Until a point is reached, this inflection point here, increasing energy alone does not lead to further growth. Stagnation sets in and the economy may go into recession. At this point, we need new innovations to continue growing the economy. Until these two things, labor and power are balanced, I cannot stop to hold my breath. Because I know that when we seek venture capitalists to invest here in Africa, we must first increase the capacity of Africa to work more productively. Investment in Africa will therefore follow the capacity of the African people to use the energy that is made available for productive ends, not the other way around. Regenerative hydrogen fuel cells are the key to unlocking this capacity by making it possible to avail decentralized, clean, sustainable, off-grid power to everybody, everywhere. When this happens, we shall create independently powered homes, villages, cities, which are self-sufficient and empowered to freely decide how to work, create, heal, feed, and transport themselves. When this happens, then investment will come, and then we can all breathe easier. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Masa. Up next is Dr. Sanushka Naidoo. Dr. Naidoo, welcome.
We may not know it, but we have been using biotechnology for centuries. We've made wine, we've made cheese, we've produced antibiotics, we've made vaccines, we've made superior cows and superior crops. But in recent years, the field of biotechnology has experienced a paradigm shift. We now have the tools to select genes, to select pathways, and to produce novel products. The vast amount of information afforded by genome sequencing and the recent scientific breakthrough in gene editing, called CRISPR-Cas, means that we can move into an era of precision breeding. I am adopting these biotechnology advances in my own research, and I'm investigating plant resilience. More specifically, I'm working on forest trees. Come to think of it, forest trees are long-lived organisms, and being long-lived, they may experience different biotic and abiotic challenges during their lifetime. With climate change, we expect that the challenge of pathogens and pests will be exacerbated. You can imagine that a tree that is undergoing a drought condition will have compromised defenses, and in that case, pathogens and pests may be rife. With human activity, we have inadvertently moved pests and pathogens around the world. And one example that I'm going to share with you is an insect pest. And this has moved to different countries around the world and become established in recent years. Don't be fooled. It looks quite harmless, but this 1 to 2 millimeter big insect pest can have devastating effects on gum trees in plantations. The insect lays her eggs on very young gum tree leaves, and this forms a gall or bumps. Eventually, that young tree becomes stunted and will never reach the potential of a fully fledged forest tree, severely limiting production. So in my research group down in South Africa, we are very curious about what are the early defense responses that a plant will emit to protect itself against this insect pest. And we find that it's a complex network, interconnections of genes and pathways. And what we find is that very early on, the cell is being compromised. Plant growth is suppressed. The pest is using these molecular responses for its own gain. We also see that there is some evidence of enhanced defenses to some level. And we realize that this is the production of specialized plant substances called metabolites. In these cases, the tree is trying to defend itself, but it is unable to do it efficiently. So what if, within this network, we can identify key points to manipulate? And we can do that knowing these molecular switches. So when we manipulate these particular key points, we can reverse the process. We can have enhanced growth and much enhanced defenses. And in that way, we could protect the tree's survival. We can harness this information and extend it into crops. And that is because resilience and the mechanisms underlying that is hardwired. This is the population of the world in 2050. We can see that Africa will reach a population of 2 billion. This means that we need to increase food production 60% to meet that demand. And this warrants investment in biotechnology and biotechnology innovation to meet those demands. Now, for some, biotechnology, and specifically genetic modification, can spark some uncertainties, some fear. But like those forest trees that I'm working on, we should be resilient. We should be resilient against fear. if we let fear spread like a pest in that forest, then we are at the mercy of multinationals that will use that fear for their own profit. And Africa will not achieve its potential. So coupling biotechnology innovation together with the right type of attitude, we will benefit the small grower and humankind. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Naidoo. Our final scientist who will receive the spotlight is Professor Maha Nasr. Professor Nasr, you're welcome.
Hello, everyone. I'm specialized in pharmaceutical sciences, and as I'm always proud to say, I'm a humanitarian before I'm a scientist. So I'll start my presentation with a question that inspired me at the Africa Science Leadership Program. Is suffering optional? Seems we have a technical problem. Okay. Is suffering optional? Or do diseased people who are suffering and in their most vulnerable condition, do they have to suffer really from the consequences of treatment? Or can we do something about that? There is a common misconception, or should I say myth-conception, among clinicians, is that dosing the maximum is much more better than maximizing the dose. And there's a huge difference between the two approaches. The first approach, which is dosing the maximum, and let me give you an example with cancer chemotherapy. The clinicians are so much focused on giving a high dose of the medication so that they can make sure that it reaches the cancer cells and kills them. But what about the healthy cells? Why do they have to suffer of the consequences of delivering the drug to them? The other approach, on the other hand, it focuses on maximizing the efficacy of a certain dose. So imagine if you give a dose which is so little, but you manage to maximize its efficacy so that you can achieve comparable outcome. So here comes nanotechnology. Nanotechnology is based on the use of nanoparticles for the treatment of diseases. And what's unique about the nanoparticles is that they are very small in size, and they have so much unique composition that they are able to be uptaken to the cells and give a tremendous effect. But so many people are working on nanoparticles. What's unique about my research? What we are currently developing are termed nanocomposite particles. And as the term implies, composite means a hybrid of several types. So the nanocomposite particles that we're developing, they are actually a hybrid of several nanoparticle types, and this hybrid makes sure that this nanoparticle is safe, biodegradable, and effective. What's even more promising about my research is that within those nanocomposite particles, I'm loading, or we are actually doing research on loading natural compounds within these composite particles. So imagine if you can take a component from a fruit, for example, mango, from grapes, from whatever, you just put it in those nanocomposite particles and you get your effect. So the unique thing about these composite particles is that you can decorate them with several stuff to achieve your outcome. Results from my research have been very promising. We actually managed to increase the amount of drugs, these nanocomposite particles with the drugs in case of lung cancer cells. Also, we have managed to increase the amount of the drugs in the brain for treatment of neurodegenerative disorders such as Alzheimer's. And what's even more promising is that our composite particles are clinically relevant. They have been successful in the treatment of basal cell carcinoma, in the treatment of psoriasis, and in the treatment of skin fungal infections. So I know that clinicians would be reluctant to change their approach and try to dose minimally rather than maximally. But what if we can do this? What if we can dose really minimally rather than maximally? What if we can go natural with nanotechnology? Then suffering would be optional. Thank you so much.
Thank you to all NEF fellows for sharing with us their amazing work that we are doing. So now we are coming to the next part of the session. I would like to draw your attention to two things. We will be having two concurrent sessions. The first session will be a plenary discussion in this very room, here. And the plenary session will be on Africa's low carbon circular economy. It will take place now in this room. Concurrently, there will be a session in MH2 room, Tunga, and that will be the CI2I Challenge Top 16 pitching session, which will focus on climate-smart innovation. For those who wish to attend the CI2I Challenge, it will be in MH2 Tunga. I would like you to come back at 3:30. The concurrent session will run between now and 3:15. Then there will be a break between 3:15 and 3:30. For now, let us proceed with the plenary session on Africa's low carbon circular economy. I will invite the moderator for this session, Dr. Catherine Touré, to come upstairs and introduce the panelists. Dr. Touré, you're welcome. Please take your seats. Thank you.